Here's a quick overview of the install of an Ihle Fabrication 3-piece feeder house floor, Hardox steel that we're going to put in a narrow body Lexion. I started by removing the feeder house, the chain, the front drum, and then cleaning it very good since we're going to install it right to our non-removable Lexion floor. We have about a fist-sized hole in the right-hand side of the feeder house that luckily was not directly above the X brace, and the customer just welded a steel plate in during the season. You can remove this rubber flap, and then once the bolts have been taken out, you can use a few of these holes to align your new steel plate, and that'll get it sitting in there perfectly. Usually that edge is not very straight, so you can straighten that out with a hammer or whatever you want to use, but then I ended up just tacking it in place before I started making my plug welds into the floor. Here's the new front section removed from the feeder house and marked for cleanup. You'll notice the perfect fit also. For getting this floor into place, I located it with 4 bolts across here. Then I just tacked it in place there. And then I found, I have a small floor jack, but I found 2 little 2-ton bottle jacks to work just about perfectly. You can brace up against the braces in the top of the feeder house. You just can't push very hard, but I was able to get those plug welds in. And then I'm going around to the front now, and with 2 jacks I can usually find a spot to brace against to get every hole just about flush for welding. And then I just move my jacks around. I'm getting a little creative to get this plate jack down, the floor plate jack down, but if we were really bad, or if we had problems with the tin dividers up here and our wood strips, I'd recommend taking those out and then bracing against the top bracing of the feeder house. That would give you a lot more to push on if you really needed to. I haven't had any major gaps, and I've gotten everything pretty much flush with the original floor so that I can weld to it. This transition piece has a slight bow in it right here, so we want to get that lined up nice and square. Also, be aware of where the customer has their faceplate riding. This piece here is going to come up here and come back and forth, so we want to have this far enough forward. The bend was just a little bit convex, I guess, for me, or too convex. So I'm going to try to plug weld the back side and then push the front side down. Make sure we have our feeder house surfaces cleaned up where we're going to put our plug welds, and also on here. Hopefully yours doesn't sit outside for 6 months like this one did, but we're cleaned up, ready to install. I put my plate where I wanted it with the rolly press on here so that I could move it around after I had pressure on it. Now I have my jack holding it in there. And then we'll try to close this gap up after we plug a few of these. The real key to this whole project, which might make it so that you're gonna struggle, is you need a jack from Kmart if you can. And also another good option would be from Sears. So if you've got those, you should have no trouble. I have this gap in the front of my plate, so I'm working along with the port of power, cinching that down. Now that we have our new floor plate in here, we're a bit thicker, so you are going to need longer bolts. Not for the outside one though. That one does not need to be longer, and you do not want them too long or they're going to rub on the transition from the rock trap. So here's what you need: 233 6890 Claas part number, and I would also advise a new seal. Here's the finished product. In addition to all the button or plug welds, I did put 3 stitches across the front plate, and then the middle plate has a couple stitches front and rear and also on the sides, just because of all the tension that was on that plate to get it to fit. That may be addressed with their newly manufactured plates. And then the rear plate, of course, I did a solid seam across the front and a couple of stitch welds on the side. I think the other brands, they don't recommend that because their floors are removable.